I just want to say how pleased I am to be with you. And I do feel what you feel. The pain that you feel, I do feel it. We've been there, and I know exactly the frustrations and the anger that each one of you has. It's not enough that we are frustrated and angry. We would like to channel this frustration and this anger into positive action. And that's how you turn this horrible experiences that we have into a positive one. But the most important thing that we need to maintain is Iman, is faith. Without it, nothing else stands. I want to give you a story, and then I will, inshallah, elaborate more. That happened to me in prison. I saw 4 visions while I was incarcerated. 3 of them came true, and I'm still waiting for the 4th. But one of them is very telling. It was the first one. Because I did not like the way my attorneys were defending my case. I thought this is about truth, and it's about justice and telling the jury and the judge what the truth is. But that's not how they were defending it. My lawyer would tell me, this is not about justice. You don't understand the American justice system. This is about telling a story to 12 individuals and whom they're going to please. And I kept saying, the government was picking and choosing whatever phone calls they want to choose out of 500,000 that they collected. And between one phone call and another phone call, there are a bunch of phone calls that would explain what happened between the two. And I wanted to translate them. He said, I'm not going to do it. I was so frustrated. And fighting with them all the time. 27 months waiting for my trial, and I don't see progress from my point of view. And after the fights, I would go and even give more assignments to my family over the burden, get a translator for this, translator for that. To make the long story short, one night I was in prison, and during my trial they put me in the women's section so that I wouldn't be communicating with any man, and they emptied the whole pod. So it was like prison inside the prison inside the prison. There was no one else whatsoever. Solitary confinement. And usually they would come at 3 o'clock in the morning to check my diabetes. So I was diabetic. So in my dream, I was dreaming that they're coming at 3 o'clock in the morning, checking my diabetes. This was like 4 months before the trial. And I said, I'm not going to stand up until they turn on the lights, because they control it from the outside. But what happened is that they didn't turn on the light. And I felt someone open the door, so I opened my eyes. Again, this is within the dream. And I see a person coming with a big rock. And they're coming to crush my head. It's only 3 steps, so I said, I have 2 choices. Either to stand up and fight, or I have memorized the dua during these situations. But it's long dua, I don't even have time to say the dua. So that person is coming. I feel the steps, the heavy breathing, and of course I decided just to make the dua, but since I don't have to say the whole dua, I just took that one part that was relevant. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. A'udhu billahi mimma akhafu wa ahdar. God is great, God is great, God is great. I seek refuge from what I fear. I seek refuge in God from what I fear. And I kept saying it, and that person is coming, and I hear the heavy breathing. He's on top of me, waiting for them to crush my head, and suddenly nothing happens. I open my eyes, that person is gone, and the door is wide open. After that I woke up, and I was telling my wife about it, and she said, what do you think that means? I said, this is a message. Stop fighting, because I was fighting with my lawyers all the time. Just pray. Just pray. Leave it to Allah. Leave it to Him. And from that day on, I did not fight with my lawyers. I just let them do whatever they want to do. And actually, after 6 months trial and 80 witnesses, they presented no witnesses. Not a single witness. And I was so frustrated. I gave them a list of 275 witnesses. And I thought this is about telling the people what actually happened. And subhanAllah, it happened that the jury stood with us, did not convict on a single charge. So the moral of the story, to me, is that you have to give everything to God. You do the best you can, but what happens is going to happen. What God destined for us will take place. And we are being tested. Our belief, our faith, our reliance, our dependence on Him is what being tested here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Alif Lam Mim, أحسب الناس, do people think, أن يفتنوا, أحسب الناس أن يتركوا, أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do people think that they will be left saying we're faithful without being tested? Now it happens, we are random people here. We would never have met in a million years if it wasn't for the common problems that we are all facing. But here we are. Somehow we were being tested, somehow we're being chosen. Think of you as being chosen. And I identify with the pain you have. The extreme pain that each and every one of you feels on a daily basis. Because after all, people will identify with us for a few hours, a few days, and they will move on with their lives. But the pain stays with us. But this is what happens. This is your destiny, is that your faith is being tested. And you have to maintain that faith. In fact, you have to increase your faith. You have to pass that test. Because the remainder of the ayah says, فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. Of course, God knows what's in your heart. But it is for you to prove yourself, your faith in Him. In another verse, God says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, we will test you, بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ, with a little fear. All of us were frightened for our loved ones. In fact, we still are. وَنَقْصِدْ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and you may loss of people, loss of risk, or bounty, or possessions. What is the answer? It's about patience. It is really testing your patience. And patience is the best remedy for any problem. But it's not easy to be patient. That's why you're being tested with our patience. And we have to maintain that patience and maintain that faith. And that's what pulls us through. That's what's going to pull us through. Allah says in the Quran also, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, that the one way to aid your pain and aid your suffering and aid your sanity is patience and prayers. So my message to you, the first message to you is maintain your faith. Don't lose your faith. And you have to understand that this is a part of our life. It's not the whole life. The brother was saying that his daughter says, I'm going to join him either in this life or the next. So we have always to look at the long term. That this is only one phase of our life that we go through. That eventually all of us will be resurrected and will stand before our Lord, and He will be the best judge. And maybe at that time you would understand better that the suffering that you had in this life is being rewarded. And those who oppressed you and transgressed you against you, they will be punished. But now, how can we take that frustration and that anger and transform it into something positive? I hear everything everybody said here is true. Our leaders, so-called leaders, have failed us. The government is taking advantage of our pain. In fact, they make us targets, and it's getting worse, not getting better. How we can transform that and make it into something positive? I want you to think of that. Even though you may feel weak, powerless, voiceless, penniless, that doesn't mean that you can't do things that you can actually ably do and make a difference. I want to suggest something, and I hope Sister Charmaine can take it into heart and try to elaborate on it between us in the future and start a movement, a real movement. This group that feels totally weak, totally powerless, totally inept, we don't know what to do. We just go with our tears every night before we go to sleep and wake up with the same frustration and anger. How we can transform that into actual movement? When you go and see your imam, I want you to do what Sister Abu Saud did. She went there and confronted the imam. Each one of you want to do that. Go and confront that imam. Go and gain a friend to go with you and confront that imam. And talk to them. You may have 9 imams who will shun you, will be afraid. You may have one sympathetic ear. Ask him to go and talk to these imams. That we would like to get every imam on this continent, knowing what kind of pain and suffering and what kind of war against the American Muslims taking place in this country, and that they are not doing anything about it. In fact, they are aiding and abetting. Talk about the prison guard, they are aiding and abetting, they are also aiding and abetting by their silence, by not taking care of you and others. We're only a sample here, a subset. There might be hundreds of others who couldn't come to this meeting. You have to be also their voices. And I know this seems sometimes difficult, but we have to take the first step. So we have to think of what we can do. You know, I want to see in a few years that everybody knows about your pain and suffering, because that's part of alleviating that pain and suffering. You know, this war is targeting our community, and it's not going to stop until we say enough is enough, and you have to stop it. Targeting and entrapping people is wrong. It's simply wrong. It cannot go on. And by the way, it didn't start after 9/11. The case of Brother Muhammad Saleh, his daughter here, his son is here. It was also another entrapment case. People think there was actual bombing in New York. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. This was the first entrapment case of that scale. And they got them by deceiving them and by having an informant, an infiltrator, and so on and so forth. So, we have to, as I said, transform that anger and that frustration into a positive force by doing something. Writing letters. You know, we're talking about letters. You know, simple things. Changing conditions in prison. Simple things. I mean, I know Mel has been championing the case of Sister Layla's son. They've been having calling Wednesdays. You know, try to get him out of the shoe, which is a very, very frustrating experience. And eventually it will succeed. But the point is, people are acting. There is an action thing. And you will get these little victories. You know, you have to see, what can I do? We may not be able to free everyone, but that's not the end of it. Because I said we're tested in many ways. And if it's destined that you will be free, like his son-in-law was, you'll be free. What matters is, what are we doing along the lines? What kind of role that this movement is taking? How we can transform it into becoming a movement that our neighbors would know about it, that our leaders would know about it, the political ones, the political establishment, because eventually once this gets into a situation where a dialogue takes place, because remember, why are we here? We have to understand why are we here. We're here because somehow people have transformed Islam into this menace. Islam became the next enemy. That means Muslims are the enemy. And until we change that image, things will get worse. I'm sorry to say. They're not going to stop. Billions and billions and billions of dollars have been spent into transforming our situation into a miserable situation in all spheres. So think of this as a struggle. And you probably did not plan about it, on it. You didn't plan that you were becoming part of the movement. Somehow you were chosen in the same way that people in Mecca and Medina were chosen. You know, the Prophet became a prophet in Mecca, and people transformed that faith into a movement that in a few years took over. And I can say, you know, about other movements in this country. This country has a history. When I talk about racism, it has a history of going after the weak. Whether it was African Americans, whether it was
Native, Japanese,
you know, Native, Japanese, internment, you name it. You know, every few decades you have a different enemy created. Now we're the ones. You know, we're taking that. So we can't run away from it. We have to confront it. And I agree with you that the Muslim leaders have failed you miserably. So we have to challenge them. Every conference we go there and challenge them. And the role of this coalition is to make that happen and give you the resources needed, so you're not alone. This is not like 5-6 years ago where you were totally isolated. Whatever resources, we'll try to help. And things will get better, inshallah. It's not going to get worse. So that's the message. Maintain your faith. Be patient. Plan ahead. Get involved. Build a movement. Stay on message. This is a struggle that has to continue. And you made a choice, definitely, because the ones who are in prison are your loved ones, but you made a choice that you want to help them, because they are helpless right now. So part of the struggle is to make their situation in prison better. As I said, we may not free them, but we can make it better. So instead of sitting at the worst prison in Belmont or others, what can we do about that? Always think, what can you do about that? And from personal experience, I can tell you, it does make a difference. I was on hunger strike, and they transferred me. It went to 15, 16, I was in 14 prisons. So in that particular prison, they wanted to teach me a lesson. So they took my glasses, took my clothes, gave me what's called a turtle suit, something that is, can't even describe it, can't even pray in it. And over a few minutes, you're like nobody. Luckily, I found a Muslim who was cleaning, so I gave him a message to my son, and called him, give him this message. He called him. Within 24 hours, I had the captain, the lieutenant, everybody in prison coming to me, trying to beg me. Why? Because that day they received 500 calls. So it makes a difference. Action makes a difference. And within 24 hours, they gave me everything back. So that's the type of, again, anger and frustration, we challenge it into action. You make a difference. So if we want to get really Ziyad out of the shoe, can we generate 1,000 calls? Can we get letters? Can we go and do the type of action that will make a move? Because, believe it or not, this country does have a system that is responsive to the populace. Not the best, but it does have it. And also, and I can go on and on, how we can affect the political system, the media, and so on and so forth. But my message is clear. That we have to, that's why this coalition was built. It was built to address all these issues. We have a political committee, we have a media committee, we have an education committee, we have a prisoners and families committee. Unfortunately, the only one that has really been working and making a difference is the prison and families, because the rest of them have not been as we envisioned them. I think part of it also is because there are so many things that have to be done, and we need to get people like you who are invested in this to take positions of these committees. I think that makes a big difference. So go and recruit people. Talk to them. Get them involved. Let's have these meetings even in different places, not just, and we'll try to facilitate whatever we can.
We have to break the fear. They are so afraid. They are so scared. You should have seen their faces when I was asking them for money.
But you see, this is about faith.
Yeah.
If you have faith, you will have no fear.
Yeah, Brother Khalid told you, imams who know the Quran and who know the Hadith, and they are hesitant to interfere.
But that's how you challenge them. Yeah. You challenge them. You're afraid. What is your faith? Because can anything happen to you without God destining it?
Or they take
can it? No, it can't. So what are you afraid of?
Wisdom.
What are you afraid of? What is your faith, Brother Imam? How can you say I am faithful and you don't come to the aid of someone who's been oppressed? Someone who's been wronged? How could that happen? And we're not even asking you to, perhaps mention it in Jum'ah prayer or anything, but at least allow us to talk to the people and talk about the cases, not to prevent us. You need to challenge them.
They tell you wisdom. We have to be wise.
Yeah, we
have to be wise. It doesn't mean we go through ourselves in the fire.
Yeah.
We have to be wise. They will close our masjid. They will close our madrasa. They will close.
But that's this. Okay, I mean that's
defeatism.
Right. But this is what the system is trying to make us believe. Is that because if you speak out, somehow you'll be punished. And indeed, that's what they do. So they go to the vulnerable. Sister, 22, 20 years old, and Muslim convert, his friend, and he was like 22 when he was taken. So they go after the weak and the vulnerable to teach lessons to others.
They told me, FBI told me, your son will be vanished.
Yes.
Just like on front of my face.
Exactly.
Your son
And then
will be vanished.
and through him, what happens to him, everybody else will be silent. So that's a challenge. Are we going to be silent, remain silent? What's going to happen to us? What's after 65 years and 86 years and 25 years? You're not doing anything against the law, right? I'm not saying you go and do things that are foolish.
How can we?
This is supposedly a country that is based in a constitution that guarantees free speech, even though they don't practice it. We teach them. We teach them that this is the constitution. Like Kathy was saying, she's so frustrated about judges. And I feel your pain. You ask Imam that is supposedly the role model of the community, please bring 50, 60, 80 people to his sentencing, and no one comes. That's shameful, and he needs to be reminded of that. Because no one would have prevented, they would not have been pursued simply because they went. Somebody wants to say something.
I'm saying politically, what can we do? We are constituent of our governors or...
Good question. What can we do politically? Obviously, this is a gradual progress. I can tell you about an experience that happened. Do we have time?
We don't have time. 10 minutes.
Can we extend it?
We are extending it.
Okay, thank you.
We're sitting, we're listening.
Okay, great. I can tell you about the experience I had back between 97 and 2001. It was the fight against secret evidence. Secret evidence was the first thing that the government was using against Muslims. Out of 29 cases, 28 were Muslims, Arabs and Muslims. They would take somebody behind, actually they would present somebody to the judge, and then they would ask him to leave the room, so the prosecution would take to the judge, give him whatever evidence, they bring you back and say, defend yourself without giving you any evidence whatsoever. What's called classified information. And obviously you can't defend yourself, then you're denied bail, and you stay in prison for months and years. So the first thing was, what do we do about this? One of the victims was my brother-in-law. There were other victims. And we thought that one way to do it is to start campaigns. So first we had the public campaign. We changed even the terminology from classified information to secret evidence. By the time we were gone, even judges and prosecutors were calling it secret evidence. So that we changed the frame of the debate. So that's what we need to do here, to change the frame of the debate. Entrapment is wrong, period. Entrapment is wrong. People are being entrapped. Okay, these are not terrorism cases, these are not national security cases. This is about thought crimes, like what happened to the Holy Land 5, what happened to myself because you were active and thinking freely, you were targeted, or they were entrapping and manufactured charges. So we have to change the terms of the debate. So that's the first thing. You go through public, through education. We have to engage the media. We went through the media, and in about 2 years, we generated 50 editorials and about 200 feature stories. Secret evidence, secret evidence, secret evidence is wrong. Every single major newspaper issued at least 1 or 2 editorials against secret evidence and feature stories. And you start, it's a whole campaign. Then we had you got education, public campaign. Public campaign, we had, there was a different counter, different ads on the newspaper. We count the days that they were on. Obviously, it's a different time, so there's no comparison. But the point is that it became a public issue. After we got through that and became public issue and debate, then we started engaging the politicians. We had legislation. We identified certain politicians that they were friendly to us. They introduced legislation, and we started getting sponsors. And then we start having hearings in Congress. And we passed in the Judiciary Committee in the House. And then we got into political campaigns, in the presidential campaigns. You know, remember about Bush in 2000, out of nowhere, the second debate, is being asked about racial profiling, and his answer was, well, racial profiling is wrong, but there is another kind of racial profiling, and it's called secret evidence, and it's wrong, and there is legislation in Congress by Spencer Abraham that needs to be passed. Do you know where he got that from? That was my condition to Karl Rove to support the candidacy of Bush. Everything I asked for through his liaison, he said before 62 million people. See, when Muslims are able to deliver certain things, the political system will respond. And why did they come to us? Because they found out that the election was so close between Bush and Gore that they would have won by, in one of these states, they thought it was going to be Ohio, it turned out to be Florida, by a few thousand votes, and that would have made a difference. So this is what I'm trying to channel that into action, to positive action. I understand that you don't have political experience, you're far away, you never thought about it. I'm talking about our community as a whole. But you need to be the catalyst to get them involved. You need to be the venue to wake them up. Because everyone is in the same boat. They can't look the other way. Somebody was mentioning what happened to the White House. It was shameful. Absolutely shameful what happened there. And I give you two stories. Two stories that will show you where we were 15 years ago and where we are today. In 2001, there was a meeting. Bush has just been inaugurated, just become president. They thanked us that we made a difference in Florida. I was living in Florida, and I know that we made a difference. And that's how we become president, unfortunately. And he wanted to deliver on secret evidence, and he wanted to deliver to the Muslim community. So they held a meeting at the White House with the leaders of the Muslim community. My son happened to be an intern for Congressman Bonnier, so he was invited along. He was just 21 years old. In the middle of the meeting, a Zionist, Elliot Abrams, asked for the list. He looked at the list and recognized the last name of my son and asked the secret evidence to ask him to leave. Within 2 seconds, every single member of the Muslim community walked out. They held a press conference at the steps of the White House and became the #1 story. That was in June 2001. And my wife received an apology from Bush. And they apologized to my son, and the Secret Service came and offered him a private tour of the West Wing. That's 2001. 2010, a group of Muslims going to the White House. One of the people who were invited is a 72-year-old leader, one of the best leaders, he will remain nameless right now, is from this area, who's done so much for the Muslims and has given his life, basically. He was asked not to go, not to enter. Everybody looked the other way and kept going. So here's 21 years old, everybody stood up for him, and he's 72 years old, everybody walked out from him. This is how our community deteriorated. That's where we were and that's where we are now. So we need to change that. All right, and the only way you need to change, somebody needs to wake them up. And you are the ones who can wake them up because you are in pain. Because you have been wrong. You can see. And above all, because of our faith. That has to put us through. Nobody can say or claim that they are faithful and they turn their backs on you. What is that faith? That's fake faith. What did they tell you? Hello Anna. Is that what they told you? How can somebody have faith and say that to somebody who's been wrong? So that's my message, is that we need to channel that frustration and anger in a positive way forward. All right? And what we do is, what we can do in the coalition is to try to make it better for you to act in unity, to act as an institution, to act together, collectively, instead of each one of us in a different way. Think what you can do, whether you can approach your imam, tell us how we can help, whether you can build support groups in your community, whether you can make a difference in the conditions in prison, whatever it is. just think of something, one thing, and let's build on it. Let's not go back home and feel helpless again, and voices again, and weak again, and not knowing what to do. Think of something positive you can do. And my experience with the Muslims is that when you wake them up, they respond. You know, during Ramadan every year we ask for canteen money, right? And it's 3 years in a row now. 3 years in a row. We ask for 15,000, 151, we get 200. We ask for 180, we get 220. So it's always even, it surpasses our expectation, because there's goodness in everyone. They just need to be talked to. They need to be, that rust need to be taken out. You need to shake them a bit. And that's, as I said, go to the leaders of this, and this is a message especially to Imam Khalid, because it's very close to all of them, that he has seen the pain that people are suffering, and you can let them know. So I want to conclude just by saying that it starts and ends with our faith, maintaining that strong faith, and by not losing hope. You know, my family during the trial went through a lot, but they never lost hope. And that hope, that they gave me that hope, because they had hope. I know Mel had hope, and her hope gave me hope.
So you gave everybody hope, is what really happened.
You know, I remember I had a pastor, you know, Reverend Clark, who would come to me and visit me every single Tuesday. And I didn't have any imam coming and visit me. So there is goodness everywhere. And I think that's what, you know, eventually, when I say a movement, I'm not saying a movement simply by Muslims. Believe me, there are a lot of good people out there across this country, and all of them will join you. We just need to move forward, because it always starts with those who are oppressed. You know, when the African-American struggle started in the 50s and the 60s, it started with a few people here and there. Now they are heroes, but at that time they were not heroes. You know, they were looked at people who are stirring the pot. Or if you think of yourself weak, you're not. Believe me, we take the stories of the Prophet and his companions very seriously, because they were saying at one time that we thought, you know, we are so weak and that we will not survive the following year. In a few years, in less than 23 years, all their enemies were defeated, and they were triumphant through their faith in God, reliance in Him, and working together. Inshallah, that's the message we can project here. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Dr.